Hey, guess what? It's .NETRocks and a very special episode, 1900. Scott Hanselman is here. I'm Carl Franklin.
And I'm Richard Campbell.
And we're at Build.
Yeah, and happen to have just we're in the process of making our 1900th episode. How did that happen? Well, we got a really great guest who's been part of the .NETRocks environment, if you will, for ever since we can remember. Show 17.
I tell people, how did Hanselman start?
Right.
Yeah.
It's because Carl Franklin called me 18 years ago and he said, "Why don't you have a podcast?"
And your answer was,
and I said, "Podcast sucks." And then he said, "Well, I dare you to make one better."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, fine, I will."
All right, but to your credit, though, what you really meant to say was the podcasts that I've heard suck.
So when I said podcasting sucks, I want to point out that there were only like 5 podcasts because it was 20 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was because so many podcasts were just a bunch of idiots sitting around jabbering. Yeah. And now podcasts are just Instagram reels with a bunch of idiots.
In our case, it's a bunch of idiots
sitting around with their headphones on and chatting. So, yeah.
Welcome to our podcast.
And then they say the weirdest, it's like, did you read that article in the New Yorker about how cinnamon cures diabetes? And then that goes viral, and then we have to talk about how that's not true.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, over and over again.
But yeah, I appreciate it very much, Carl. You supported me for 500 episodes.
Yeah.
Edited, produced. Hanselman. It would not exist without.
Well, thanks.
The Carl Franklin family.
But
podcast.
I remember at the first time I met you was at an RD meeting, and we were talking about. I think we were talking about Joseph Campbell, of all people, and maybe
the hero's journey.
Yeah.
The hero's journey, and how the similarities between cultures of the religions and the things that manifest themselves.
Yeah,
you related it to C#.
That's awesome.
You were like, "Yeah, .NET is kind of like that."
I love my analogies.
Oh, it was great, and I was like, "All right, this is a smart guy. I want to get to know him better."
Did you want to do the open?
Yeah, let's do the open. Better know framework.
All
Roll
right.
the music.
All right, dude, what do you got?
I came across this and I said, this has got to be the Better Know framework for Scott Hanselman because he's such a Commodore nerd.
Yeah, he is such a Commodore nerd.
This is 8-bit do retro mechanical keyboard C64 edition. Programmable keys, intuitive controls. It's a keyboard for your PC that looks like the Commodore 64
That's
with
so
the rainbow logo and all of that.
Oh my God.
I purchased that on March 29th.
Of course you did.
It has been on pre-order with a July shipping date, and it turns out that it is going to be arriving Wednesday.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
Cool.
Looking
Now,
looking
this
forward
was
to that.
just convergent thinking, right? I mean, you found it just probably the same time.
And I wore a
did.
Commodore 64 t-shirt yesterday.
Nice.
And at Dev Intersections on stage with you, we asked ChatGPT through a Commodore 64.
Yes.
We had a Commodore 64 live on stage. We used a BBS software
Great.
to simulate talking to a bulletin board.
Yeah.
You can go and the young people can Google for that with Bing. And we BBS'd into an Ubuntu VM, ran a Python script, called ChatGPT and asked it to run and write a 6502 assembler and then say hello world and then run it on the Commodore 64.
This is so
Why? Because it's awesome.
Because it's awesome. Yeah.
It was a lot of hoops.
It's retro, too.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so
There's
funny.
a lovely Commodore 64 user group active
Yeah.
in the Portland area. We meet
kidding.
We meet at Kingpins in Beaverton. You're more than welcome to join us.
That's phenomenal. The traces have got to be falling off those boards, man. Like
No, man. So we
stuff is old.
you can actually go in and search for C64 cap kit and get and recap. So like if you talk to a Commodore or a ZX Spectrum or an Amiga person, you say, "Oh yeah, when was the last time you recapped
your board?"
Yeah. I had a 1571 Commodore disk drive, and it had magic smoke come out of it, right?
As they do.
And they go, I got to recap it. And you go and you buy all new capacitors, you desolder the boards, and you redo them, and they'll live forever.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
No moving parts.
I just have one question before we get started.
Yep.
Can I buy a pair of Crocs?
So I made a video where I 3D printed a pair of Croc-like, not Crocs.
Yeah.
And people have telling me in the comments that they are very litigious. They are simply plastic shoes.
Yes.
With a passing resemblance.
Yeah.
To Crocs.
There you go.
I was worried that you had said the word Crocs in that video.
They are not Yeezys. They are not Yeezy slides. They are not Crocs.
Yeah, okay, that's.
But you made them for your son.
I made them for my son.
Does he wear them?
He does not. They're too slippery.
Too slippery.
Wrong material.
Wrong material.
Yeah, you got to change.
I got to put they're missing that Crocs magic. Okay. This episode is brought to you by Crocs.
All right. Well, Richard, who's talking to us?
I grabbed a comment off of show 800 because why wouldn't I go 1,100 shows back?
Right.
But we always have fun with our odd shows, and when we made show 800 in 2012, our guests were Scott Hanselman and Rob Connery.
Yeah.
So it was like the podcaster gang, and there's like 30 something comments on this show. Like it's huge. Lots of chatter. Just, it was fun, but I'll read James McLaughlin's comment from 11 years ago. He started with Avengers Assemble. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
The Marvel Universe has been going on that long.
Yeah. This episode is like all my favorite podcasts put together. Very interesting behind the scenes glimpse of how you guys all do it. Scott's comment about asking potentially stupid sounding questions really resonated with me. If I'm to build something for someone, I'd rather keep going over it until we're both convinced that I've got it. I don't want to go away giving the other person the impression that I understand and then build something incorrect. I also don't want to keep going back with questions about things that the other person thought were settled. It serves everyone better when you spend all the time up front to come with a common understanding, even if it means you have to take a credibility hit up front.
Right.
I remember James McLaughlin. He's from the UK.
Yeah. And when you come back and the exact thing is built, you look like a pro.
Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah. No.
And the comment about asking potentially dumb questions. That my whole podcast is dedicated to me asking dumb questions.
That's it.
Someone asked me how I did so many episodes. I know that I'm not at 1900. I'm only at 950.
A mere.
But the trick is, if people email you and say, "Hey, can I pick your brain and buy you coffee?"
Right.
That's annoying.
Yeah.
But if they say, "Hey, would you come on my podcast?" That's not annoying.
Yeah.
But it's the same exact thing.
It is pretty much the same.
Right.
Yeah, it is.
Sure.
I have no business talking to these people.
That is one of the secrets, isn't it?
Yeah.
James, thanks so much for your comment. And a copy of Music to Code By. It's on its way to you. And if you'd like a copy of Music to Code By, write a comment on the website at DotNetRocks.com or on the Facebooks. We publish every show there. And if you comment there and I read it on the show, we'll send you a copy of Music to Code By.
And you can follow us
That was very smooth. I'm sorry. Can we talk about that?
That was true. He does that live every time. And people, when we do live shows, they're like, what?
Yeah, the look on their faces when we do a live show and I rip that out. And they're like,
the part that I was missing though was the part like the prescription drug part where you go, music to code may cause abdominal distension. Do not taunt music to code
at 3x speed.
None of these statements have been validated by the FDA.
Very nice.
Talk to your doctor before proceeding with .NETRocks.
Anyway, you can follow us on X Twitter, which is what I'm calling it now. Get it? X Twitter.
I refuse to call it X.
Yeah. We're in the same boat. We've been on there for a long, long time, but all the cool kids are hanging out on Mastodon. I'm at Carl Franklin at techhub.social.
And I'm Rich Campbell at mastodon.social.
Do you have a Mastodon account?
So I do, and I can give you a cool tip. If you just search for @scott.hanselman.com, you'll find me. I'm actually on Hachyderm.
Right. Yep.
But you can use a thing called WebFinger. You put a single file on, Franklins.net or on Campbell Associates, and then it will be a pointer to over where you are. So you can just look for my first name and at my last name, and you'll find me.
It's very good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should do that.
I'm also on Threads, AirChat,
Blue Sky.
Instagram, Blue Sky.
I have a list of all those at carlfranklin.com, so that's where I tell people to go.
I'm on all of them.
I'm going to set up the finger. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay, so we haven't formally introduced Scott, but if you haven't listened to him lately, he is now Vice President of Developer Community.
Congratulations.
What is that? What is that about?
I don't even know what
crazy.
What is that?
What a weird compliment capitalism pays you.
So but I didn't want this show, and neither did Richard, to be three old guys talk about the old days, get off my lawn. But it's too late.
What else can we do?
It turns out that that's a really valid point of view that may be missing in some conversations. Maybe not the get off my lawn part, but we did the show with Sean Wildermuth about, the aging senior developer and, the decisions that we make in our older years about what do we want to do next.
Yeah.
And it resonated with the listeners. We weren't sure if it was going to, but it really did.
And then follow that up with Aaron Erickson's show.
Yeah.
Who is also a 50-something developer, but he was the nomadic developer when we interviewed him ages ago. And now he's working he did all the jobs. He was a consultant, and then he went into, he dabbled with some other companies. Then he did a startup. Then I moved to San Francisco, did the startup, failed horribly, but and it was an AI startup, and he got hired by NVIDIA. And now he's working at NVIDIA on large language model stuff.
But the Energizer Bunny still just going and learning new things,
super
and never
excited.
slowing down.
I just thought it was a really interesting set of shows to think in terms of, what did you want from your career? Like, you've got your VP. I don't know if that was a goal for you.
Well, so now that I'm on the downslope, on the way out,
auguring in,
I have thought about what my identity is. It's not my company.
Yeah.
Never has been. I feel like I'm a teacher. I was a teacher before. Yep. I'll be a teacher after. Yeah. All of my vibes are teachery.
Yeah.
Now that I'm older, I've been told that I give off big dad energy.
Yeah.
So that, I think, is a position that I will happily take.
Yeah.
And my job is to make the kids successful, whether it be my own kids or whether it be early in career people, regardless of their age, because there's a lot of great 40-something career switchers that are early in career. So on my way out, the question is, who is the next Richard Campbell? Who's the next Carl Franklin? Who's the next, Angie Jones? How do we make these great new developers that are maybe in their 20s, or are in their 40s and their career switchers? So that's my goal.
I want to pay you a compliment because you paid me one earlier. When I think of you, one word comes to mind, and that's integrity.
Oh,
absolutely. You spoke truth when truth needed to be heard and wasn't very popular, and you still do that to this day.
That's very kind. Thank you for that.
Yeah, well, it's very true, and I think a lot of people will agree with me.
Sure. No, when folks ask me about you, I talk about your diabetes video, watching you do your routine.
And
to me, it's always a thing of, it doesn't matter that I think you were 30-something when you did that video. Good Lord. Yeah. And, but you still flinch.
Oh, it hurt. Yeah. Well, everyone's like, does it hurt? Do the needles hurt? No, they hurt. Yeah. It's a needle.
Look at it.
I remember being on the phone with you before we did a Hanselman Minutes one day, and you were like, hang on one second, I got to jab myself. Oh, geez. And it sounded like a horror movie. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry.
Yep. No, it's your life. You're the glucopilot.
None of us are getting out of this alive.
No, none of us are at all.
But back to the old programmer thing.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that we can offer is kind and patient mentorship and historical context.
Yeah. Exactly.
Goodness knows.
I love historical context, and I love the enthusiasm of the early in career developer, the young person. I love how excited they are about stuff, and I don't want to bring stop energy.
No.
And one of the things that we as elders, we'll say, have a tendency to do is bring stop energy.
Yeah. It's the get off my lawn mentality.
Yep. Oh, we did that. Oh, God, we did that before.
Yeah. And why would you do that? That's a lot of work.
And instead of, no, we did that before and you shouldn't do it now, we go, yeah, okay, I can see why you'd want to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Here's what we learned when we tried.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, and.
Yes,
and.
Yeah, take them forward on that. Certainly be enthusiastic with all the possibilities that are out there.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm the 50-something still in the speaking circuit. And most of these speakers are in their 30s now. And you know what? They're a great crop of speakers.
There's a bunch of very, very exciting speakers out there right now, and they're doing a lot of really cool stuff. And I think we're also starting to see, and I always like to see, speakers that build first and then talk.
Yeah.
You can really, really easily get pulled into the quote-unquote international technical speaking circuit, and all you do is talk about stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. And,
go make things.
Go make things.
Then
disappear, and then talk about what you made. Because I want to know what you made when I was wondering where you were.
Yeah.
Where are they? They're off making stuff.
They were making stuff.
So our generation, and I don't want to be in my day we used punch cards and we liked it guy, but our generation saw the evolution of computing from, maybe just after punch cards, to the PC, from the PC, certainly, all the way up to now. And there is some, I don't know, would you say that we came of age there, and there were fewer people maybe following that curve as there are now? And, so it was easy because there were less of us, easier to fall into the pit of success? Or do you think that now, with so many things being so easy? All right, let me give you an example. What you just talked about with hacking this Commodore 64 and BBSs and stuff, we've been doing stuff like that the whole time on the bleeding edge, where things were... People didn't know you could do what we did. And so you're like, wow, you can do that? It's fairly much a meritocracy. In my career, anyway, you can do that, you're hired. You can do that, you're hired. Whereas now there's so much information out there. It's easier for people in some way to get in on it and learn things quickly, but are they as motivated, or is there a difference?
Let me frame it like this. It's easier to get the information. It is harder to get noticed. When we were starting up, there were like 2 or 3 books. You're in the basement. You have a question. You can go on FidoNet or CompuServe and you can wait a couple of days. You send a box top to Kellogg's. You get back a toy in 6 to 8 weeks.
Right.
Right. There's no idea of like Skyping a friend.
Right. I remember writing on CompuServe to Dan Appleman about his Win32 book.
Dan Appleman wrote me back.
He wrote me back
always.
And he wrote me back fast. At one point, I literally said to him, I don't understand how you're doing this. And he's like, I don't get as many questions as you think.
No, I disagree. I'm sure Dan Appleman gets that.
Brilliant.
Lovely guy.
No, one of my inspirations. Like when I grow up, I want to be Dan Appleman. Like he was so kind.
Another one of, actually, I have 3 favorite Dans. Small side thing. If this was a book, this would be the little box in the corner of the book with the offsite. You got your Dan Appleman. Lovely. You got your Dan Bricklin.
Yes.
Made Physicalc, right? And then you got your Dan Schiffman from the coding train. Processing. Wrote a processing language. Lovely. You want to just meet who's the Mr. Rogers or the Bob Ross of programming. Dan Schiffman.
So because it's harder
guy.
to get noticed now, do you think is like the current environment of social media, TikTok stars and all of that, where people want, and to get noticed for being a developer takes too long? Like, is that a barrier? I'm trying to figure out, like, what's the difference between what are the challenges that young people have today that we may have had differently?
There's the getting noticed, but there's also does getting noticed matter?
Yeah.
Right. There are lots and lots. I still stand by my blog post about dark matter developers so many years ago that said that there are a ton of, for every one Twitter star, there's 1,000 people that are just doing the job, doing the work, and they're doing great, and they're well known in their space, and that's fine. I don't think Twitter, and when I say Twitter, I'm using the word like Kleenex. The brand name Twitter means all of social media, social. You don't have to be a YouTuber. Yeah. There's a lot of introverted people out there that have no reason to be on Twitter, but they can consume, right? I just think that we see the glamour, but it is algorithmically designed to make us feel bad about ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
So don't look at Twitter and somebody's freaking GitHub graph and go, oh, my great. Comparison is a thief of joy.
Right.
Work on yourself. The only person you should be comparing yourself against is you yesterday.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
See, podcasting, same thing. Like, we both got into it. We all got into it very early on, and that's why DotNetRocks and Hanselman became very popular, arguably, because we were the go-to places to listen to for .NET, essentially. And now everybody and their brother has a podcast. And I love when somebody tells me, have you heard of podcasting? I look going, no.
But people ask me for advice about podcasting, and I do have to tell them that you have to grind.
Yeah.
Nobody listened to the first 100 episodes of my show.
That's the truth. Yeah.
Right. Very few listened to the last 100 episodes. But like the first 100 were grind. So then you just ask yourself, well, what's a good number? And people are like, well, if I don't get 1,000, you get more than one?
Yeah.
Right? Did anyone listen who's not your mom? That's awesome. Congrats. Seriously. You get 10 listeners?
That was never the motivation.
That's 10x.
No, it was never the motivation.
It was never the motivation. It was the conversations.
Right.
You said this offline, but maybe it was in the show, actually. I can't even remember now.
I'm pretty consistent.
That the bugging from somebody to have coffee with them is annoying. But ask them to come to the podcast is not.
That's what I
But they're
said.
actually the same thing.
They are the same thing. Yeah. And I would encourage people, if you are having great conversations, to document them, write about them, share them.
Doesn't matter.
So that other people can feel connected.
Well, that was your line, right? Is you saw Rocky and Billy arguing over the first version of .NET and thought everybody should hear
Everybody should hear this conversation.
Yeah, because it was two really great minds.
There were a couple of times, I don't know if we actually did a show, but we did attempt to record conversations in the lobbies of hotels.
Yep.
Because there's this magic that happens somewhere around 9:30 in the lobby of the Hilton after the thing, and everyone's kind of quiet and tired, and they're coming down from an exciting day 1 or day 2.
Yeah.
And
they're reflective.
And then there's just vibes.
We did a show, a .NETRocks, called The Speakers Lounge, and you were on it, and I will be quizzing you about these shows.
Oh, Lord.
After the break.
I don't remember any
of the things that you said. Don't worry, they're multiple choice. And it was very much like that. And that was the reason, because we all had these great conversations in the hallways outside or in the Speakers Lounge.
Yeah, literally trying to capture the hallway track.
Yeah.
Right. But
that's very good.
But you made the point. It's like there are certain times in the day where you're more reflective, and it's
There
a great time
absolutely
to catch a story.
Nighttime quiet is the time for me.
Yeah.
That's when I'm reflective, or when I'm tired.
Well, I definitely remember you and I doing like a Hansel minutia in the corner of a lobby of a hotel somewhere in the evening, and just riffing.
My most fond lobby of a hotel moment was in Stockholm, and you busted out a guitar.
Oh yeah,
which he's
and started doing. What did you do? I've got the video. I was recording on a flip cam.
Nice.
What?
This is pre-smartphone.
Holy crap!
And you had a guitar, and you just busted out some. I don't know what it was. I'm not a classic rock guy, but you just started busking in the middle of the lobby of the hotel.
That's cool.
And I had a flip phone.
Sounds like me.
It was freaking amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Definitely set a vibe.
So speaking of music, I experienced this from the opposite side in music, right? In the music business, I am not popular. I did not ride the wave of the 60s and 70s, and I wasn't in the right place at the right time in LA when the things were happening. But so the music business, I feel like I was born too late to be noticed. And so by the time I was good enough as an artist, according to me, to create an album, it was harder and harder. Like albums didn't exist anymore. And now we're in cassettes. So then I started making home cassettes, but, and then CDs. And I thought, okay, I'll make a CD. By the time I was able to afford studio production and make a CD, that was right about the time where people didn't want CDs anymore. So I kind of feel ripped off a little bit. But now that vinyl is coming back, I'm actually going to do a vinyl album.
I would buy a Carl Franklin vinyl press.
Wouldn't that be cool?
That'd be amazing.
It's not going to be cheap either, but it's going to be full of
You should do
artwork
a Kickstarter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But also, what's interesting about that vinyl movement is really the music as ceremony.
Yes.
The one thing, right. I don't know if people know this, but you and I have been hanging around with each other for a fairly long time.
Long time.
Fairly long time. And one thing I know about you do love to play, but you want people to listen.
Yeah.
You are not willing to be background noise.
It's very soul draining when I have those.
And you're volunteering. You're not being paid. Like you're just going to play.
Just want to play.
Yeah.
Home at Last.
Okay.
That was the song.
That was the song. That's one of your favorites.
Yeah.
That's on.
It was in Sweden.
I did a video of that.
After.
It was a Silverlight video.
You did a video with you playing each individual thing.
It was an experiment in video for you, as well as you're using the Silverlight publishing engine.
It was very Jacob Collier. You were, you know what I mean? You were just riffing, and it was very early on, because people now do those kind of videos all the time, where you bring in the next person and it's the same guy in a different thing.
Right. And the bottle of Woodford in every shot.
Woodford in every shot. I did a better one called "Waiting for the Summer to Come," where I actually had one shot with all me in it in 4 different instruments at the same time, and I could zoom and pan across it. That's really
amazing.
cool.
That's amazing.
I remember that one too.
But anyway, so I'm wondering what developers that are younger think. I mean, are the golden years of software development gone? Does it matter that Gen Z and millennials didn't grow up on the bleeding edge? Does having more choices today from sophisticated tools and platforms make it easier or harder to break in? You talked about this, makes it harder to get noticed, but you told me that your goal now is to be the Mr. Rogers of development and sort of talk to the young people. What kind of feedback are you getting from the young people that about writing software, about the things that we were doing versus now today?
I think that the stack is really deep.
Yeah.
And most people go kind of to HTTP and not much farther.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of things that we learned building home networks, you just buy a Google Mesh or whatever, and it just works.
Right.
So I'll make a comment about REST, and then we'll start talking about HTTP, and then we're talking about TCP, and then we hit the granite very quickly.
And magic network stuff.
Yeah, and then a miracle happens.
A miracle happens.
Right.
Far side.
Right.
I love it.
We're all storytellers here, and I do know I can engage people to take them down through the stack and those things, and they often are interested. Not always.
That's what you got to ask first.
But you talk about the old guy no. The old guy no is, I had to learn this before I could work, so you have to learn this before you can work.
Right. So the example that I give, and I try to give a gender non-specific old guy no here, which is my 16-year-old wants to drive, so should he learn how to drive stick? And the fact is, he doesn't need to drive stick.
No.
Not in America. If in Europe, or
he wants to experience Farfignugan.
in America, 3 to 4% of cars are stick.
Yeah.
In Europe, it's more like 50 or 60. But the point is, he lives here. So then the question is, well, Uber is a thing.
Yeah.
Well, we don't live in a big city, but there are perfectly cromulent New Yorkers that are living their lives without ever having gotten their licenses.
No.
Yeah. My stepdaughter's one of them.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
So if I were to insist and say, well, young man, you have to change your oil and change your tire and learn how to drive stick, and then I'll give you an automatic. And you have to learn how to code an assembler and debug a dump, and then I'll give you a garbage collector. That would be disrespectful.
Yeah.
But
and stupid.
To let them know that the information is available if they want.
Yeah.
I always have encouraged, and people who've heard me before will say, like, yeah, there's your Hanselman's like 6 phrases, but take the level that you're currently working at and go one level below your comfort zone.
Yes.
So if you're a JavaScript person, like, understand how V8 works. If you're a .NET person, how does the CLR work?
Yeah.
You don't have to learn how to like smelt your own iron ore.
Yeah. Generate your own electricity.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to take the rock and inject lightning and make it think. But it's nice to have a sense of systems thinking and how these things all fit together. And I will say, though, that there are personalities, there are types of people who are naturally systems thinkers.
Yeah.
One of the stories that I love to tell was doing a Black Girls Code presentation, and I was saying, we're going to learn how to code. We're going to debug a problem. Yeah, let's debug a problem. All the kids, all 14, 15-year-old high school kids. And I said, all right, everybody, my toaster is broken. And I pause and I make it really awkward. And I say, I really want toast. And they're like, well, you should buy a new toaster. And I said, that's one way to solve it. We can probably do that. But what if I buy a new toaster and it doesn't work? And then someone's like, well, is there any electricity? Is there power? And they're all sitting there thinking. And then one girl in the back yells out, do the neighbors have power? Look outside.
Great
thinking. Are the lights on on the street? We're talking about toast.
Yeah.
All I wanted was hot bread. And that's a programmer.
Yeah.
Like whoever she is, she's wired.
Yeah, she's wired.
Because she's like, it's probably DNS. Look outside, it's DNS.
It's not DNS.
You know what I mean?
It could be DNS.
Because,
okay, it's
but
DNS.
But the fundamental, the like going from point A to point D or point G, that's how programmers like debug things. And the fact that she was able to go, I understand the system in which the toaster exists in one where power is a thing.
Right.
And maybe maybe the neighborhood had a power outage.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's great context.
That's good.
Now, I've also come to be really comfortable with the idea that they're not only different species of programmers, but there are versions that are their best selves.
Yeah.
They're not all developers are the same. They're not even close to the same. It's one of the biggest problems you deal with is folks thinking, well, I can plug any programmer into any problem. It's just not true. Certainly working around Microsoft as I have for so many years is like, do you know how many places there are to work where you write programming languages?
Yeah.
Like 5. And the folks that are good at that love that, they're a different species. And it's the same, like, building great teams over the years is like, that guy loves networking. He's got a knack for it. Like, that's the piece he wants to work on.
Follow your bliss.
Yeah.
Follow your bliss.
And value each of them. And good leaders go and put the puzzle pieces together.
Well,
everybody doing their favorite thing, and it makes the whole thing.
Scott Hunter likes to say, if you're putting together a basketball team, you should hire for height. Right?
Duh.
So I don't care about I've said this before, I don't care about your degree, where you came from, your native language. If you're tall, I can teach you the ball handling and dribbling.
Right.
Yeah.
The rest
So
could
like,
come.
I learned, I learned JavaScript. Okay, we'll teach you C#.
Yeah.
I learned Rust. Okay, we'll teach you VB or whatever.
It's easier. It's easier for a tall person to just put the ball, just put it in.
Exactly.
Just reach over and dunk it in.
And of course, to our friends who may not get that analogy, we're talking about like intellectual height.
Yeah.
Just like if you're professionally curious, if you're excited. One of my most favorite programmers is Safia Abdullah on the ASP.NET team.
Oh, man, she's so great.
She's a beast.
Yeah.
And I think she didn't even know C# when she came to work at the company. She was a Python person,
Right.
Yeah. But you can see her like the Matrix. She's putting code together in her brain and snapping things together.
Down.
So it's not about the syntax.
No.
It's about the
or
system.
any given tool.
Just before we break here, my brother was a Marine engineer, naval architect. And so he went to school for Ann Arbor for engineering, got his degree. And then he was like, I don't like this anymore. And I was like, yeah, you should get into programming. So he took a VB class. Yep. After graduating the VB class, he went right to work for a company learning Java, JavaScript, mumps. Like there was like several languages that he learned, and he's been there ever since because he could just adapt. He had the engineer brain.
Yeah. And all of those examples that we're giving are examples of people feeling empowered, being empowered by the people around them, like you encouraging him. Yeah. And I want the young people and the early in career people, the code switchers, to feel empowered. One of my faves is a gentleman named Lawrence, who's on Twitter at Lawrence Codes. He was in hospitality for 25 years. Wow. And he started being curious about tech, and he's like, there's no reason I can't do that. No. Why not me?
Yeah.
Great. Why not be? Why not me? Is a very powerful statement.
Yeah. And I guess it's a quiz time.
Well, you're up, man.
I was not told there would be a quiz.
No, wait. Before we do the quiz, is there any soul message that you want to tell the people from your perspective as a VP, from being here at Build? What's the message?
If you like a thing, or if you don't like a thing, vote with your feet.
Interesting.
You have power.
You have power. If you don't
like it, tell people that you don't like it.
Right.
If you like it, tell people that you like it.
Yeah.
Right.
Microsoft is not a monolith. It's a big, giant company. It's 300,000 people.
Pretty sure it's your quote that we are not organized enough to be as evil as you're accusing us of being.
Oh, yeah. We are not as organized as to be as evil as you think we are. Yeah, absolutely. We're just a bunch of stormtroopers running around on the...
whacking into each other sometimes.
Whacking into each other on the Death Star. No, but there's a lot of really smart people. Yeah. Have empathy because every feature, every button, everything, every idea was a human behind it.
Yeah, great people
and
worked
if you
on it.
presume that they're doing their very best to make a fun and exciting and fair and safe and responsible private product for you, engage with those people because they're all out there. You don't see Apple engineers on social media. You can't just find the owner of the thing.
Yeah. No, they're strictly against. Generally speaking, Apple employees aren't allowed to admit they work for Apple.
Yeah. To Microsoft's credit, if you like a thing or you don't like a thing, you can find that person and say, hey, here's some feedback.
Yeah.
And we'll usually listen.
And I think I'm not off base by saying one of your catchphrases is don't be mean. Don't be a dick. You'll get a lot further.
Yeah.
I actually had a T-shirt I was going to wear today that said, work hard and be nice.
Nice.
But it doesn't fit anymore.
Well, there's a classic photo of you that's very old of you holding up a Post-it note that says, why so mean?
Yeah.
I just think people should be pleasant. That's all.
Yeah. I agree. All right. Let's get into the quiz. So what I did was I went back through all the shows that you were ever in, and I pulled out some questions that we asked you or things that you said, and we're going to see how good
you do know that I am not known for a memory. Like I live in
so this should be a lot of fun.
I live in a blissful window of 3 days in either direction. All right. I don't know what's going on.
First question. In episode 17, published in March 2003, I asked you, what is the one Windows tool you can't live without? And you said A, 7-Zip, B, Dave's search bar, or C, OpenOffice.
2003? I don't think that 7-Zip existed in 2003. I think it was WinRAR. Or ARG.
Which you still haven't paid for.
I did the research. 7-Zip did indeed exist in 2003.
2003. Dave's search bar. I liked Quick Run, Slick Run in 2003.
OpenOffice.
I would have to. It's going to be either. It's not OpenOffice. It's going to be Dave's search bar or it's going to be 7-Zip.
Pick one.
Let's go with Dave's search bar.
Here's the answer.
If I could say there's one tool that I would install Windows and then install that tool, it would be Dave's search bar.
Yay! Correct. That's awesome.
Oh, my God.
All right, here's the
pull
next.
that out of the
Very
archives.
well reasoned.
Good Lord.
Yeah. All right, so in episode 51 from February 2004, you told us you had LASIK surgery on your eyes.
Oh, God.
Which you did. What was the startling fact that you discovered during this process? That A, the laser itself was hot pink and you were waiting for Nurse Barbie to walk in. B, you were surprised to learn you would not be under general anesthesia. Or C, the machine was running Windows 98.
C. 100%. I mentioned this yesterday.
No kidding.
Because I was talking to Shonda Person, and she just got LASIK, and I pulled that out of the archives that I, in fact, had a very old...
Here's the answer.
I had laser surgery on my eyes a couple of days ago.
Really?
And damn it if the machine wasn't running Windows 98.
I am nothing if not consistent.
That was Rory.
Yeah.
He said
right.
really. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You've battened 1,000 so far.
Oh, my God.
In episode 70, called The Speaker's Lounge, which we talked about, recorded July 2004, you had sent me a bunch of topics that we could talk about. And when I asked you what's on your mind, what did you answer? A, you were fascinated with the artist Usher. B, the final episode of Friends made you weep like a baby. Or C, you forgot the list of topics.
What year was this?
2004. July 2004. Fascinated with Usher, final episode of Friends made you cry, or you forgot the list of topics.
I'm going to say it's Usher, but it's probably I forgot the list of topics.
And here's the answer.
So we want to know what's on your mind, and I guess Scott brought up some good topics. Scott, what's on your mind?
I think I emailed it to you, and then at that point I've forgotten it.
See? I'm taking that one as the win.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
You're 3 for 3.
It should have been Usher.
I remember you and I planning out a Hansel minutia.
Oh, no.
Right? We sort of batted some stuff back and forth, what we were going to talk about. And then you went to Chipotle, inevitably, and got on their Wi-Fi, and their Wi-Fi had been hijacked.
I remember that.
And then you came, and when you got, it's literally like an hour later, we made this perfect plan. It's like, I'm going to get something to eat. I'll come back and then we'll record. Okay, get back. We are only going to talk about hijacked Wi-Fi from now on.
Yeah.
Like that whole show.
They had a rootkit on their
on the WRT.
router.
Yeah.
Yeah, I became friends with the manager, and I had to go and get the rootkit off the router because it was.
You helped him?
Yeah, it was
great.
because it's my favorite Chipotle.
It's his favorite Chipotle.
I need
Yeah.
to use that Wi-Fi. That Wi-Fi. It's a public service.
Right.
And it was hijacking DNS.
Yeah.
Sending people to bad sites.
And I mean, I'm the kind of guy also can roll with that too. I think we ended up talking about all kinds of exploits
That was
going
lovely.
on.
I'm impressed that you pulled the audio. That's a next
that's
level.
hard work.
Do you know me?
Just next level, man.
I have these. All right. So in episode 107 with you and Rory Blythe, recorded April 2005, I asked you how many readers your blog, which was Computer Zen at the time, had. And you said A, over 10,000. B, somewhere between 1,000 and 8,000, or C, most of my traffic is spam.
The answer was probably A, but I'm going to say it's C.
Here we go.
I don't refer to them as readers. It's usually spam. Most of my traffic is spam.
I remember Rory's Google Weirdos.
Oh, God.
It's so funny.
The funniest thing we ever did on DotNetRocks.
Just looking for the search strings that people found his site on because he talked about such random stuff.
Right. Cooking with pig milk. All right, so I actually played this one and asked Phil Hack about this, but in episode 458 with you and Phil Hack, recorded June 2009 at NDC, you talked about yours and Phil's NDC talk where you, Scott Hanselman, set up an ASP.NET website and Phil hacked into it by sending you a video by email that you clicked on. What was the video of? A hamster on a piano. B, Michael Jackson's autopsy. Or C, a steamy scene from True Blood.
Hopefully A, because both of the other ones are problematic.
Yeah.
Here we go.
And then I got this email from my good buddy Phil Hack that said, check out the picture, this video rather, of a hamster on a piano. And who doesn't like seeing hamsters on pianos, right? You know, I like hamsters and I like pianos, so I figured
I always click those.
that would be great. So I click on it, and it takes me to his website, which then generates a fake forum post with JavaScript, and then because I was already logged into my banking site, he basically forum posted over sideways to my site and started a transfer to take money away from me.
Wow. And I talked to Phil about that. That's a great talk. I mean, hacking live.
Yeah. Legit.
Okay, so in episode 582, published in August 2010, we were talking about the web platform installer, and Richard pointed out that there were a lot of apps you could install. What was your reaction? A, there are more apps than you can shake a stick at. Sounds like you. B, so many apps, it's ridiculous. Or C, a metric ass load.
Oh, it'll be C.
You sure about that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, here we
question.
Well, and there's a ton of apps in here, right? I mean, there's a whole e-commerce section of this.
There is a metric ass load.
It's the term you use.
But, when I was researching
I'm more
this...
refined now.
Well, at least you use the metric measurements because that way they're divisible by... you need your ass
load. It's not an imperial
by
ass
10.
load.
Yeah.
But, here's the thing. Those other two answers are legitimate.
Also
Pacific
things I would have said.
Northwest.
Mm-hmm.
Very much something I would have said.
Yeah. That's so funny.
All right. In episode 731, published January 2012, I read a tweet by one Matt Rock, which read, "Getting an IM from Scott Hanselman in an intro to Richard Campbell is like what? A, like my daughter getting the same from iCarly and Justin Bieber. B, like Bill Clinton getting a letter stating that he had won Big Macs for life. Or C, like Lindsay Lohan accepting the Best Actress Academy Award for her role in the Lifetime movie Liz and Dick."
I don't know what B and C are, so I'm going to say A.
Oh, that's good.
Listen to this tweet from Matt Rock. "Getting an IM from Scott Hanselman in an intro to Rich Campbell is like my daughter getting the same from iCarly and Justin Bieber."
I think you're Bieber.
I think Scott's Bieber. I have to go with that.
Nice.
I'm prepared to be iCarly.
Very nice.
Richard pulls out exactly what his reaction was
I don't know
then.
how you guys remember this stuff. I don't remember what I had for lunch yesterday.
Oh, Richard remembers everything. So.
I don't remember anything. My wife hates that. She remembers random conversations on Random Tuesday. I don't know what day it is. I wonder why I'm so happy and chill, because I don't remember any of this stuff.
Nothing to worry about. Nothing's happened.
We got
Ignorance
a couple more
is
here.
bliss.
Okay.
In episode 800 with you and Rob Connery, published September 2012, you told us of a place you like to go to work and watch people. Was it A, Starbucks, B, McDonald's, or C, the Multnomah County Library?
And what was the context?
So you told us of a place you like to go to work and watch people. Was it Starbucks, McDonald's, or the Multnomah County Library?
Multnomah
It
County
was not
Library.
Chipotle,
What
but
year is this?
2012.
2012, McDonald's.
Really? Okay.
Multnomah County Library is a deep cut, but I don't live in Multnomah County.
Okay, let me just come out and say it. I'll just confess. I was at McDonald's earlier today.
Good Wi-Fi.
Hang on.
McDiabetes meal.
Hang on now. There's free Wi-Fi, and there are things you can buy at McDonald's that are not bad.
There you go. You got it right. Okay, so now let's move on to episode 805.
I'm sweeping this, actually.
You are killing
you're totally
this.
killing it.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
In episode 805 with you and Chris Sells, which we recorded on the 2012 road trip.
Right.
And published in September of that year.
We totally lost control of that show at one point.
Oh,
you
yeah,
two
it was
just
out
went
of
off.
control. You were speaking of how people who post comments on your blog are mean, and that had made you afraid to post anything at all. And Richard asked you why you allow anonymous comments at all, and your answer was A, I believe in free... Hey, you can't Google this.
Free what with this?
Your answer was, I believe in free speech, even if it hurts my feelings. And this is why you allow anonymous comments on your blog in 2012.
Yeah.
B, because karma. I mean, mean commenters have to sleep at night too. Or C, because I don't know how to make OAuth work.
Oh, man. Probably all of those. But I'm going to go with C.
Okay, here's the answer.
Well, the question is, why are you allowing anonymous comments at all?
Because I don't know how to make OAuth work.
I mean, you got to give me...
Scott. Nobody does.
Because OpenID is a huge fail. No, but...
You got to give me credit for at least knowing myself.
So, dude, the pause before you answered,
it's perfect.
Because I don't know how to make OAuth work.
Well, because
like
the pause there is, do I be honest or do I not be honest? And
Do I say something funny? I can do both.
Just try to say something honest.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
Okay. So the last one here. In episode 1131, open source panel discussion at .NET Fringe, published in April 2015, you called comments by James Newton, quote, either elitist or mean after he said one of the following statements about Visual Studio. A, Linux is the only operating system I will use for development. B, it makes you want to kill yourself every time you open it. Or C, .NET, it doesn't suck anymore.
What is this what I said or what he said?
No, what he said.
He said B, and I called him out on it, and he
If you can now run this thing on Linux, you can now build it with tools that don't make you want to kill yourself every time you open them. You can
See, why do statements like that helpful?
Well, it depends.
I mean, seriously. Like, I hear what you're saying because I feel like 75% of what you're saying I agree with. And then 25% is either elitist or mean.
Boy, that was a tense moment.
It was a good one.
The problem was that he has valid feedback.
Sure.
And if you have good feedback, that's great. Put it in an envelope and mail it.
Yeah.
But if the envelope is a rock and you tape the message to the rock and throw it through my window, I'm probably not going to read the note.
Yeah, you're less inclined to go along with the other 75%.
So, I mean, I then got accused of being mean because elitist was a statement or whatever. But, dude, that was not necessary.
It was not necessary.
I also remember talking to you on the phone.
So mean?
Yeah. But you called me as I was driving back from that show. I had an 8-hour drive. I was driving back from Portland, and I think we talked for 3 hours. And
then at the end, we always go, we should have recorded this every time.
I don't think that one was pretty personal. Like, you are not normally a confrontational person. You want to tell the truth, and I appreciate when you are. It's not like you do it for fun.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a very good moment. I think most people thought it was a very good moment. But I know I've known you long enough to know that isn't an easy thing for you to do either.
Right.
And we ended up talking for quite a while about it afterwards.
Well, yeah. I mean, you don't want to be unnecessarily confrontational.
No.
But I also don't want to be dismissive of people's feelings. So, I do have a certain amount of it's not that deep, man.
Yeah.
For some people, it is that deep.
Yeah.
But, you should consider, I wrote a blog post called Software and Saving Babies.
Nice.
Is it software? Is it saving babies? Or is it literally baby saving software? Like you got to go and think about all the different things you're working on and then compare it to whether or not we're saving babies.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe the wrong ad gets served because you're working on ad serving software.
Right.
Or maybe you're working on a video game and the guy doesn't jump at the right time. But are you saving babies? So it feels like it's a huge bug or it's a huge problem, but it's probably not that big of a deal. Take a breath. It's going to be okay. Let's work the problem. So I'm very much like the older I get, the more like, let's just chill out. Let's solve the problem.
It's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay.
We'll work our way through.
I hope so. That's naive, perhaps, but also a little bit optimistic.
Yeah. Before we go, let's talk a little bit more about these mean people who we've been referencing. Not necessarily James, but there are people out there that love to throw darts at people with power, maybe people with celebrity, as a means of furthering themselves or getting noticed anyway. I noticed this in the very early days of DotNetRocks. I would get people who couldn't just come out and say, hey, I would like to be a guest on your show. Here's what I have to say. They had to instead throw rocks and, be mean.
The classic was the angry blog post referencing a show, right? And then people would come at us and you got to respond to that. I'm like, no, really don't.
Don't really want to do that.
Doesn't make I'm only going to do something that makes the situation better.
There was one of these people who was very mean. We actually ended up engaging them, and they ended up ruining their career. And that was just the way it went. But, it's sort of, I'm not going to say who it is, but that sort of speaks to the karma of the situation, that you never know who you're talking to or talking about. So be real and don't be a jerk.
Well, I have no problem with James. I had a problem only with that sentence.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure if James is listening to this, the point was 75% valid.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with him. I don't like, it makes me uncomfortable that we're talking about people at all on a podcast. But I do believe in karma, and I do believe that if you're kind consistently for decades, then good things will happen.
Yeah.
But it gets back to the very beginning of the show, the difference between stop energy and yes and energy.
Yeah.
If you're a hater for a long time, I'm convinced that it's going to cause high blood pressure and cholesterol and heart disease.
Yeah.
And people, it would be very, very hard to live a 100-year plus life and everything sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tough way to be.
Try to be positive and try to be constructive in your feedback.
The great thing about pessimism is you're usually right and occasionally pleasantly surprised.
No, I'm a perpetual optimist.
Yeah, good. Yeah. I know that much about you, and as funny as I may be at this moment, I am too.
And as I said, integrity is your middle name, and Everybody should realize that and understand that about you.
Didn't
I
that
thought
silly
it was taco.
Is that silly quiz you just did a proof of the integrity?
Absolutely.
You know,
I'm impressed with myself because I was literally, I had no idea. You didn't tell me there was going to be a freaking quiz.
No, it was a surprise.
Yeah.
You didn't tell me it was going to be a 20 years of and you have recordings, like you've got tapes. Franklin brought receipts. But at least I am nothing if not consistent is what I learned from that.
True.
And you still are, believe it or not. Thanks for doing this 1900 with us, Ben.
Yeah.
No, absolutely my pleasure. Thank you.
Great.
Be sure to listen to Hansel Minutes on hanselminutes.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, because this is also a Hansel Minutes, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll turn around. We'll make this Hansel Minutes as well.
It'll be fun.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you next time on .NET Rocks.
This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes, and we'll see you again next week. And then this is from where you go. Hansel Minutes may cause abdominal distension.
Consult your doctor before consuming Hansel Minutes.
Perfect way to end it.